Well, hi, Dean. Welcome to Book Sandwich Inn. We're excited to have you, and we have a nice audience here looking forward to hearing your comments. So, welcome to the Richmond Library, Dean.
Thanks, Jason. Great to be here.
So, I finished your book, and having a conversation here with some library friends. One of the things that caught my attention at the end of the book, you acknowledge a story about your mother-in-law, how you won a lottery and went to Yosemite Park. And I love your description of the June afternoon story about the snow. Can you maybe expand on that for our audience here, if you don't mind?
Yeah, it was kind of a magical moment. My mother-in-law had put in to get a cabin in Yosemite for her husband's, my father-in-law's 70th birthday, and happened to get picked. So she gathered all their children, and I'm married into the family and grandkids. And my wife and I have four daughters. They were young girls at the time, and so we're from the East Coast. We're from Richmond. We're used to the Appalachians. They're not as big as the West Coast mountains, and we were wearing shorts and sandals and ready for used to the heat and ready for a summer day. And lo and behold, it snowed that day. So it was kind of a magical moment. And then pretty soon we went to what's now called Tunnel View, but was Inspiration Point. And I took in that just amazing view of Yosemite Valley, and instantly knew that my perception of America was changed. It was really a revelation. So it was a great moment. And, after it took, more than a decade for the book to come about, but that's the way things sort of happened with me.
Very good. So one of the questions you had asked your readers rhetorically, which I loved on page 296, had John Muir, had he testified in the famous water and dam debate in San Francisco, would the outcome have been different? You didn't answer that, but you called us to think on that. If you had to answer, what would you say, and how much weight do you think John Muir would have had in that conversation and in that debate?
Well, it's a great mystery and will remain that way. But I do think he was a very influential guy. And if you read, when he took Robert Underwood Johnson, his editor at Century Magazine, out to Yosemite, took him up into Tuolumne Meadows and introduced him to that and talked to him about it. And then he, takes President Theodore Roosevelt out to the mountains and camps with him and talks to him. He's a very, very persuasive guy. I think he had a great personality, great sense of humor, incredibly intelligent. And so I think, in the halls of Congress, if he had been there, it would have been very stirring, very moving. And back then, I think at least maybe it's a little bit easier to move people and get individuals to make, decisions like that. So I think there would have been a chance that he could have had a powerful impact if he'd come to Washington.
It could be a whole new book, like, revisionist history. Had John Muir testified, what would have happened, right?
Yeah. Well, and also, Emerson came out there and tried to get him to come to Harvard to teach. And Muir, it was sort of gut-wrenching for Muir because he loved Emerson, but ultimately said, no, the reason why Emerson loves me and respects me so much is because I'm here living in the mountains in nature the way he'd love to do.
Right.
And if I go east, I'm not me anymore. So,
right. He had his core values, I saw, and I learned he wasn't going to veer from his values.
Right. He was very true to himself.
So one of the pieces I liked, I'm a history person, history major, and you talk about the Muir-Johnson partnership, how it's kind of like an odd friendship, but very successful. I'm going to recommend to my audience here, they read a book on Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill. It's another odd partnership, but that was very successful. Can you think of a partnership either from modern times that might be like John Muir and Johnson, probably like an odd couple that did great things as a pair and together?
Well, I think this union is really distinct and extraordinary. These guys knew each other for over 4 decades and have an incredible correspondence that I drew from to write this book. And I really can't think of any other pairing of a philosopher, writer, and an editor. And this moved me too as a writer. I was like, I've never seen anything like this. Where they create a national park, they create the Sierra Club, they help inspire the National Forest and make that happen. They inspire the greatest environmental politician, Theodore Roosevelt, that we've had, and they did so much. I don't see any real parallel to that.
That's unique. That's a great answer. Good. So I just went to Alaska this past summer, and you have a chapter called the Yosemite Alaska tie, or the Yosemite Alaska connection. So just how did that impact John Muir spending time in Alaska, and how it impacted his work in Yosemite?
One of the things I did when I wrote the book was John Muir had a sprawling life, and Lenny Marsh Wolf wrote an award-winning biography back in the 40s, and I read that early on, and I was like, well, he did so much, that it almost gets confusing. He's such a major figure, and what I needed to do was really find that narrative arc that was about what Muir was great. And so, in fact, when you read my book, you don't get as much of the Alaska material as you might in a biography, because I'm really focused on what he did in the national parks in Yosemite, and what made him great and why we should remember him. But the Alaska was a huge part of his life. He loved Alaska. He loved glaciers. He loved native cultures, and he was very respected in Alaska by the natives there. And so I think all this glacial theory that he found in Yosemite and that he could then explore up north was important to him. Also, he went on a scientific expedition that gave him connections that would be very important in his political battles that he would then fight.
Yeah, good. That's a thoughtful answer. It's not something that I usually think of, how Alaska ties into Yosemite, but it is a neat tie. Mm-hmm. So I love John Muir's writings. One of the book reviews I read from the New York Times said your challenge was going to be in your writing match what John Muir wrote, which I think you have met that challenge, by the way. Mm-hmm. But is there a favorite story or a favorite quote or story of John Muir that you want to share with our audience?
There are a lot of great stories, and I was sort of cherry picking those stories. To his young life was such an adventure. But in 1869, when he comes out to California for the first time, he walks all the way from Oakland to Yosemite Valley, and falls in love with it, decides to stay, and works as a shepherd. And his first approach to the valley from above, he has just he's been with the shepherds and taking care of the flock, and they've had to push them across a river, and there's very sort of trying time, and he's off with Carla, the Saint Bernard that's been entrusted to him, and he's looking along the rim of Yosemite Valley, of the canyon from above, and seeing this extraordinary beauty, and really wanting to get a view directly down into the canyon. And Muir lacked the fear gene. He was incredible. He would climb vertical cliffs. He would do amazing things, and so he works his way right down to the edge of Yosemite Creek. And to me, the moment that he describes there moved me so much, because he sees the creek coming to the edge of this half-mile plunge into the valley. He's looking into the sunlight refracted through the beads of water that are churned up there, and seeing a rainbow in it. And he's seeing the death of the creek, but he's also seeing rebirth and new life down below. All set in this extraordinary landscape that he's seeing. And it's just mystical and magical, and speaks to his deep love of the valley, his deep faith also that would sustain him through environmental battles. And so for me, that's the moment also where after coming to the ledge, it's sort of a harrowing, hair-raising scene. He then goes back that night and has vivid dreams of him falling into the valley with a crumbling mountain. And then a couple of days later, he writes in his journal, that all things are connected, a line that will become his famous line that he'll repeat in various iterations throughout his literary career. So that magic moment of him first discovering Yosemite Valley from above, really sticks with me.
That's a great story. So last question, I'll give you a chance to do a shameless advertisement here. Is there any books you want to recommend or that you have upcoming that our readers may be interested in, if you want?
Well, I've focused on history and adventure throughout my career. Skeletons on the Sahara was my first book about the true story of a shipwreck on the west coast of
Yeah,
Africa in
saw that.
1815. And so you get a great dose of nature there. And then I did a book about the Hatfields and McCoys in the Appalachian Mountains. So mountain culture, nature, history, adventure, things that I really love. Kevin Fedarko's recent book, Walk in the Park, is fantastic. Hampton Sides' book about Cook's explorations, also fantastic. So there's a lot of wonderful nonfiction writing going on right now that combines history, natural science, adventure that I find very exciting.
Yeah, good. Well, thank you so much for being part of this. I think this is the first time we've had an author participate in this. We had these series in the fall and the spring. And Dean, I want to thank you for your time.
Pleasure. Thank you, Jason.